According to the Coronavirus Task Force, more than 2 million tests have now been performed in the United States. And yet there are still people who need to be tested, such as healthcare workers who can't get one. It's part of the reason there is now so much interest in a different kind of test, an antibody test. Dr. Fauci told CNN on Friday it's coming soon.
I'm certain that that's going to happen, that within a period of a week or so, we're going to have a rather large number of tests that are available.
But what exactly are antibodies? They are proteins in the immune system that develop days after someone has been infected. And it's the antibodies that make someone immune to becoming reinfected. It means two things. You were previously infected, and you are now likely to be protected, at least for a while.
We think it'll be a tool to help us get people back to work. It'll be additional information because, as you know, if you have an antibody, that means you were exposed and have recovered from it. That, with the information about diagnosis, should help.
That's why public health agencies around the world want these antibody tests, because it could help some people get back to their daily lives. You remember the swab test we're all familiar with? Well, that tests for the virus itself, specifically its genetic material. Problems are, first of all, at some point after you recover, that test will be negative. And secondly, a lot of people have had trouble getting that diagnostic test in the first place. The antibody test is more definitive. There are only a few reasons you would have antibodies in your blood. You got someone else's antibodies by an injection of their blood. You got a vaccine, which teaches your body to make antibodies. Or you were infected. The antibody test requires a sample of your blood and this strip, which has proteins from the virus on it. If your blood reacts to that strip, it means you have antibodies in your blood.
And I think really being able to tell them the peace of mind that would come from knowing you already were infected, you have antibody, you're safe from reinfection 99.9% of the time. And so this, I think, would be very reassuring to our frontline healthcare workers.
Another benefit of antibody testing, surveillance. In places like Miami-Dade County, Florida, Santa Clara County, California, and Telluride, Colorado, they have already started using antibody tests to get a better sense of how many people, many of whom will be surprised to learn, have already been exposed to the virus.
Whoever volunteers is getting tested twice, and the purpose of that is to see who seroconverts and develops the antibodies, meaning who was actively infected during this period of quarantine.
A CDC spokesperson told CNN the agency has already used these tools to, quote, monitor contacts of infected people and to identify individuals who, due to mild infection, may have not known they were infected. Getting the antibody tests up and running, much like the tests to detect the virus itself, have been challenging. In a rush to get these tests to market, the FDA lowered the regulatory standards, and what followed were a lot of unreliable and inaccurate tests.
There's a series of antibody tests out there that have not been validated. Some of the tests that may be available on the internet may have very low sensitivity and specificity and give you a false reassurance that you either give you a false positive or a false negative, implying that you may be protected.
Adiós, que te vaya muy bien.
A bit of what we all need, hope from Europe. Here, a Spanish patient leaving the ICU. Austria, the first in Europe to think about easing its lockdown. Its Chancellor said Monday smaller stores may be allowed to open after Easter, but customers will be required to wear face masks, as they do now in bigger grocery stores. Some European governments saying their curves of reported infections are now going down, as the US and UK's still go up. Everything will be okay, draws a child in Italy, once the epicenter, where now deaths have been slowing down for over a week. In France and Spain, they've been slowing since Thursday. In the Netherlands, a week. Portugal since Friday. A sign that time can show the exit from weeks of grief, fear and solitude. Denmark also saying it may ease its restrictions.
Når det kommer til corona i Danmark.
Against a very serious backdrop, said the Danish Prime Minister last week, we have grounds for cautious optimism. But Spain, where the toll has been severe, exercising caution and patience.
No podemos permitirnos...
We can't afford to relax our attention on this instance, said their Prime Minister. We have to keep going forward with the same discipline, the same solidarity, responsibility, and with the same tenacity. But as if on cue to warn about loosening restrictions too fast, Japan itself hit less hard in past months. Monday prepared for a state of emergency amid rising cases. The duration will be about 1 month, said their Prime Minister. We need further cooperation from citizens to minimise contact between people. The virus showing how indiscriminate and unrelenting it is. A reminder that even if you can see the light, you are still in the tunnel. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, London.
So van life is quite difficult in Europe at the moment, especially here in Spain.
I think there's no question about it. These are really difficult times for people.
Storage is an option, so we can't stockpile or hoard.
I'm from Florida, and I'm currently in the Nevada desert, and there's no way I would go back to Florida right now.
How's it going with the lockdown, guys?
Lockdown was absolutely horrendous.
I bought a few boxes of oatmeal. This is as much water as we've had. Yeah, it's like people were just being moved on by police, so they're being constantly moved on, which is, again, if you're a van lifer and you can go home, or you have a home to go to, that's fine. But let's say you basically live in your van, then essentially your lifestyle is outlawed.
A lot of us in the nomadic community are very aware of what's going on, have been aware for a while, started to isolate about a month ago. So before any of the regulations went into place, I was already out self-isolating, and I've been doing that for a while now because I think it's part of me doing my part for society. As a whole, we have to know that we're all in this together. As a nomadic community, a lot of us have realized that we have to slow down and settle in for a little while.
So we are making all of our food, so once we cross the border and have to self-quarantine, we have lots of food. We do get a lot of people saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing it, it's my dream. I just don't think I would want to live any other way than RVing, because it's the freedom. And you live with less, and you realize you can live with less.
People may think, oh, well, it's terrible. Like, how can you deal with being in self-isolation when you're in such a tiny house?
You both have a mission to actually travel the world in your tiny house, don't you?
And you've done something quite special over here to create a dining space, haven't you?
Yes.
When it comes to people who are living alternative lifestyles, so be that in tiny houses or maybe van life, I think one of the trends that I've certainly noticed is that in general, people who live tiny have a much smaller cost of living as well. Quite often they don't have mortgage payments, they don't have a tremendous amount of debt over their heads, which means that the cost of living from a day-to-day basis is much more affordable. So that certainly adds a tremendous element of resilience when we're going through a struggle like this.